Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beat On, joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario himself, the Spectacled Wonder, Gray Albright. How's it going over there, Gray?
Good, man. I just got a haircut. What do you think? Look good?
Looking real clean, Gray. Looking very clean, very summer.
Bro. Thanks. I
short
appreciate
summer.
it. I was at the barber and he was like, "Oh, it's my birthday." And I was like, "Oh, really? How old are you?" And he's like, 84. I'm like, "Oh, okay." He was like, "Yeah, I'm just happy to be here because I had last month I had a stroke and I had to go to the hospital and there was like brain surgery." Like, "Oh my God, man." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's really scary." And he's like, "Yeah, but thankfully I was able to go onto YouTube and watch some hair cutting tutorials. So we should be fine." I'm like, what?" I was like, "Bro, what? Wait, what?" So yeah, ended up working out okay, even though my barber needed to do YouTube tutorials to learn how to haircut again. Oh
Just need to
man.
connect the old synapses back, no big deal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was just like, "Yeah, I had to brush up on some stuff because I lost feeling in my right hand." I was like, okay. Could you watch out for my ears, bro?
Gray, it sounds like you've been going to this guy for a while now. It may be time to switch it up next time. I'm just, give him a nice severance package. Let him know, like, I appreciate what you did. And
I
then,
will say in his defense, he looks younger than 84. Oh man. So yeah. Anyway, let's get to it.
yeah, let's jump into this, Gray. At the top here, Coby Mayo was called up in AAA this year in 77 games, 341 plate appearances. He has 20 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 56 RBIs, 56 runs, 61 RBIs. He's in 301, 375, and 586, 24.3% K rate, 10% walk rate. Hasn't really hit the ground running. He doesn't have a hit yet, but what do you think about Coby Mayo? And is it an ad across the board, or what are you thinking, Greg?
Well, I was like, I went in and like other guys previously, I bid on. I usually do my fab bidding like as soon as guys get called up, so I don't forget. So it's like Coby Mayo gets called up, so I go into fab and I put in bids because just in case we get to Sunday and I'm like, "Oh crap, I forgot to put in my fab bids." So anyway, so as soon as the guys get called up, I put in my fab bid. So I went in and I put in a big bid for Mayo. And then each day I slowly lowered that bid. I just kept lowering it until I finally got to Sunday. I was like, "Do I still want to bid?" Yeah, so I did though, and I ended up winning him in a couple leagues because I'm sure other people had did the same thing. Everyone was real excited when he got called up, and then when he went 0 for 11, people were like, I don't know, maybe it's not such a good idea that I bid on him." So yeah, I did though. I won him in one league out of I think I had like 30, maybe $25 left out of 100, and I bid. I originally bid $6. I ended up winning him for $3, and then no one else bid, so I could have bid $1. So he basically was free in that league, and then in another league, I think I bid like $30 out of like, I think I had like 200 left. I bid like 30, and the next highest bid was like in the 20s. So again, it's like nothing really. I mean, it's very little. It was basically free to get Coby Mayo this Sunday. I'm assuming that is strictly because of the really small sample size, which is kind of silly. I mean, if we get if in the Orioles next game, if he hits 2 homers, does that change everyone's perception of him? I mean, it's like, he had a bad 3 games. Yeah, big deal. What difference does that make, really? With all that said, I think he's got great power. He should actually hit for a decent average, and he's got like probably a handful, a little bit of speed, not tremendous, but he could be a difference maker, I think, and especially at third base, with the third base eligibility at least, it's like, yeah, I need that, especially like in the corner man position. Like I lost Christian Walker last week, so yeah, I was all about Coby Mayo. And I still am, really. I mean, I think if there's like, a guy who could come up and make a difference, there's very few guys at this point. Coby Mayo could be one of them. Do I want him over, I don't know, a top 10 top 10 corner man? No, I mean, obviously not. He's a flyer at this point. But by this point next week, we could be talking about Coby Mayo in a totally different light. We could be talking about how he's like, he's, locked in and hitting bombs and all this great stuff, or he could potentially be benched or sent down again. So it's not, I mean, it's really a fluid situation at this point. If Coby Mayo is sent down by this point next week, I wouldn't be shocked. And on the other hand, if he's like, the next coming of Tyler Fitzgerald, I also wouldn't be shocked. So we'll see. I think there's a lot, in a small sample. I think with Coby Mayo, he's probably as good as any guy you're going to be able to get off of waivers, likely. But there's also, I mean, in a sample size situation where it's like, as much time as we have left of the season, if he doesn't hit in the next week, he's also going to be droppable. So, there's a lot up in the air with him, but I like him still.
Yeah, and of course this happens because Jordan Westburg goes to the IL, he fractures his hand, so he's probably out till at least mid-September, if not, playoffs or later than that even, depending on that recovery. So he has a little bit of runway. They still have Ramon Urias who can, come in, and he's been fine this year, so it's not like they don't have any more options. But yeah, it's been 3 games. Let's give him a little bit of leeway here. I know I said the exact same thing for his fellow prospect Jackson Holliday, who was also recalled, and that didn't really turn out the first time around, Gray. But would you rather have Coby or the newly recalled Jackson Holliday at this point?
It's so impossible to say because there's just so little time left of the season. In the big picture, I think Jackson Holliday is a better hitter, better pure hitter. Coby Mayo could potentially be better for fantasy, but it's really hard to say. I'll say Jackson Holliday just because, he hit 2 homers since his return. So it looks like he's a little bit more locked in. But if by Friday of this week, if Mayo's hit like 3 homers and Jackson Holliday's gone 0 for 12, I will just say I'll just flip flop to Mayo. Like I'm not really locked in on Holliday over Mayo for this season alone. For dynasty keeper / next year, I would probably say Jackson Holliday as well. I think he's just a little bit more of a pure hitter, so he has probably less chance for just like totally bottoming out. Whereas like Mayo could have trouble with strikeouts, and there's a chance here that Mayo is like a 25 to 30 homer guy who hits like 230, which is fine. I mean, that's not terrible in most leagues, but it's also not Jackson Holliday, who could potentially be like, 5 category guy, even though the power and the speed probably aren't going to be like he's not going to be Ronald Acuna Jr., but he's also, potential for 5 categories. even if, the power and speed aren't necessarily like insanely great.
Yeah, I mean, I think the power is what's going to carry Mayo if he's going to be, a big asset down the stretch. I don't know that he's got a lot of speed. I mean, he can steal a few bases here or there, but more like taking them when they're just going to ignore him type of thing. I feel like, especially as he develops. Jackson's shown a little bit of speed, but he's kind of in that camp as well. But I think he's a little bit faster. I would go Jackson as well. Just again, the short, very small sample size that we're looking at. He's produced better. He's already gotten a look and kind of figured out what he did wrong the first time. That always makes you feel a little bit better, I feel like. In AAA this year, Jackson has 10 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 75 runs, which seems kind of crazy, 38 RBIs, 271, 431, and 477. He had a 22% K rate and a 21.7% walk rate. So, he's just a very good base hitter, as you mentioned, and the baseline feels a lot safer than Mayo, but both are worthwhile gambles at this point.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, Jackson Holliday is probably, he has the potential of being a top 20 overall fantasy guy. Whereas I don't know if Mayo really has that potential. I mean, Mayo, I feel like his best possible outcome is probably like Teoscar Hernandez during a good year, right?
Yeah, kind of that, or maybe he can be like Rhys Hoskins with a little bit better average potentially.
Right. Well, yeah, which is Teoscar Hernandez. But
Teoscar has a little bit of speed. Like Teoscar has the speed steal bases. He just never does. Which actually might be Mayo. Mayo might have the speed to steal bases and just doesn't. He's like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm good. It's not important.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I think Jackson Holliday is gonna be a star. I'm not convinced Mayo could be. I think Mayo's definitely got star potential, but he needs to. He's probably best. Maybe not the best case scenario for him. Maybe is not Teoscar, but maybe like Vlad. Guerrero Jr. If it's like 35, 7, 280, maybe is best case scenario for Coby Mayo. That's not, not next year necessarily, maybe in 2 years, maybe next year, so yeah, I mean, he still has star potential, Coby Mayo. I don't want to come off too down on him, but I think Jackson Holliday feels more like a lock of, potential star.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just not for nothing, the park is better set up for Jackson Holliday than it will be for Coby Mayo.
That is that's my mother's favorite expression. Not for nothing.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
I didn't know you were a housewife on Long Island. Interesting, Bidon.
I do feel like maybe that is my calling, Gray. It's just a housewife in Long Island. I feel like I'd be very good at that. But let's move on to some trade deadline stuff that happened after our show last week, Gray. We reported last week, we talked about the Dodgers trade, and there's more details that came out. Dodgers got Edman, Kopech, and Oliver Gonzalez. Cardinals got Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham, and then the White Sox got Miguel Vargas, Joe Perez, and Alexander Albertus. We talked about Edman, Pham, Fetty last week. I think that kind of just leaves Michael Kopech to talk about in this trade that's going to matter for this year, and maybe Miguel Vargas as well in deeper leagues. But what do you think about Kopech? Is he going to be involved in, save opportunities, or is this mostly just kind of extra bullpen arms?
He could become involved in save opportunities. I think it's probably just bullpen arms. I don't know if the Dodgers, it's funny, the Dodgers spent like $2.7 billion on their team and they don't really have a closer, which I don't know if that's ideal, but they have, I would say it's probably Hudson, Hudson, Kopech, Phillips, and then funny enough, Anthony Banda was the one who got the save on Sunday. I don't even think he's in the committee, but maybe. I mean, I guess he could be in the committee. He's a lefty, so maybe if the ninth inning is lefty heavy. So yeah, I think Kopech could see some saves potentially, but he's by no means the favorite there to get saves. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Kopech, in the Dodgers' next game, he could come in like the 6th or 7th inning, and it wouldn't shock me. I mean, I don't think anyone really has, Dave Roberts has figured out a way to, just make a complete mess of the bullpen. No one has a role really. I think Evan Phillips had the closer role for, obviously had it for a couple months there, for a good 3 months. But now he's showing up in games in like the 6th inning, and it's like, okay, I guess Evan Phillips isn't the closer anymore. I don't know exactly why, but yeah, he's definitely been supplanted. I would say, if anything, Daniel Hudson would be my favorite to get the saves in LA, but maybe I have zero confidence in that prediction.
Yeah, I would go with Hudson right now. I mean, Phillips has been just a mess, just can't do anything recently. So until he gets back on track, I would say I agree with your order. I think it's Hudson. Then I think it's Kopech if Hudson just bombs. And then I'll throw Blake Trinan in there since he got an opportunity, which he also blew. But, it just feels like he's one of those guys that's going to get in the mix too, just randomly.
Yeah, no, completely. I think, more interestingly enough is Miguel Vargas and the White Sox he went in there as a barely an infielder, and then they put him in left field because, obviously the White Sox have too many stars. They can't fit Miguel Vargas in the infield to play. I got an idea that came to me when I was at the barber the other day. What if the White Sox started watching YouTube tutorials on how to play baseball? Could that help? Oh man, the White Sox got the word. I mean, this is a terrible deal for the White Sox with like Vargas, who to my mind looks like a quad A player. I mean, we'll see. He's still young enough where maybe he can come on and show some of his potential, but I don't know, man. He looks pretty lost at the plate for like, almost a full season's worth of at-bats now. He's got like almost 450 plate appearances in the major leagues, and he's hitting 195. It's like, oh, it doesn't sound like a star in the making to me, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he does feel very quad A right now. He is only 24. I mean, it's a good move in the sense that, they got
Something.
a young player back, I guess. But like, I feel like of all the trades that we're going to talk about here, they got back a return that feels very, very light for the pieces they were giving up. And we've already talked about everything else here. So maybe Miguel Vargas gets it back together. His minor league numbers still look good. If you could just translate that over at some point and hit, 275 and go 15-15 or 20-20, that'd be great. But as of right now, he does not look like that.
Yeah, no, I think Miguel Vargas is probably, at this point, I'd say his best outcome is like a good season from Benintendi, like 12 homers, 275 average. And that I think the White Sox would be probably pretty happy with that if they got that from Vargas, which is basically useless for fantasy.
Yeah, unless you're in only leagues that are deeper ones, it's really not useful. Let's move on. The Dodgers also made a couple other moves since we talked last. They added Jack Flaherty, sent back Tehran Lorenzo and Trey Sweeney to Detroit. Flaherty's got 112 and 2/3 innings. He's 8-5, 2.8 ERA, 0.96 WHIP, 31.8% K rate, 4.5% walk rate. I mean, Jack Flaherty felt like one of those most obvious people to get moved ever type of situations, but he's on the move and good for him. He landed in a good spot.
Yeah. I think the LA is Dodger Stadium is a little bit tough for homers allowed, and Jack Flaherty's had a little bit of a problem with that this season. But other than that, everything else is pretty pristine in Flaherty's peripherals. I mean, his strikeouts to walks and everything. I mean, everything really looks good for Flaherty this year. If his name was removed from his stats and you just looked at his stats, you'd basically be like, is that Corbin Burns? It's not. Corbin Burns is not pitching anywhere close to as good as Jack Flaherty is this year. I think the only real issue with Jack Flaherty at this point is, he had a little bit of a sore back. So, if that flares up, the Dodgers do have, they have like 16 arms. their rotation is like 18 guys long, depending on who's healthy. But I think if Flaherty is, if he has like a little flare up with his back and misses, a handful of starts, I mean, it's not great, obviously. And there's so little time left that, it could be it could hurt his fantasy value a bit from now until the end of the season. But yeah, his numbers look as good as any starter in baseball. It's hard to find someone whose numbers look as good as Jack Flaherty. I mean, he looks like basically like a number one, easy number one. I'll be interested in seeing how he finishes this year versus, where he goes next year. But I'm already like leaning towards like Jack Flaherty. I'm hoping he's like my first starter off the board next year, because if he continues anywhere close to this year, it's hard to imagine him not being a number one. I mean, he looks like basically where Tariq Skubal was at this point last year.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll use a one. I guess for the way that we draft, I feel like he'd be our one, but that means he's going as a 2 or a mid 2 even, based on where we tend to take pitchers grade. But yes, he could definitely be on that. I mean, his stuff has always looked good when he's healthy. He's just been battling that for the last couple of years. That's always in the back of my mind, just the health and can he continue to do that? But yes, he looks absolutely great. There's really no issues there, just because we'll hear it in the comments. If not, I will point out Corbin Burns is actually above Jack Flaherty on the player rater, but that is completely due to the great wins luck that Corbin Burns has and the absolutely awful wins that Jack Flaherty has had on a AAA team in Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. If you put Flaherty on the Orioles for the whole season, then he would probably have 15 wins, and he would be like a top 3 starter.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I he'd have to dominate and win them a World Series to come back, I think, given the amount of arms they have coming back at some point this year or next year. So we'll probably see him move in free agency somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. I wouldn't mind seeing him like San Diego, maybe Seattle. Oh my God, that'd be so nice. I wouldn't mind if he went back to the Dodgers. I mean, they can afford him, but we'll see.
They can't afford him. They just don't really. They really don't need him unless they're going to have half their staff get injured again, which it could happen. It's happened like back-to-back seasons and probably like half of the last decade. So. Definitely possible, but I don't expect that to continue, or at least for them to bring him back. But let's move over to the other trade they made, or one of the other ones. They get Amed Rosario, send back Michael Flynn to Tampa Bay. 79 games this year. He's got 2 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 23, 27, hitting 306, 330, 417, 17.7% K rate, 2.5% walk rate. And the Dodgers also grabbed Nick Ahmed from waivers, which has been kind of a split scenario so far in this in their tenure with the Dodgers, which is pretty annoying for both their values. What do you think here on Amed Rosario and Nick Ahmed?
And Kevin Kiermaier. All are, I mean, Nick Ahmed I don't know. Nick Ahmed seems to be in front of Rosario, which is really confusing to me. I kind of wish Rosario would be the starter set in stone, and then Ahmed or Kiermaier would, get in somehow. Well, Kiermaier's more of an outfielder, but I wish Rosario and would be the starter, and Ahmed would be, the guy who came in late as a defensive replacement. But the Dodgers do have a lot of bats, so they don't really need to, Ahmed, I guess his defense is having him in front of Rosario. I don't know. I don't know. And trying to make logic out of what Dave Roberts is doing isn't always, it's sort of a fool's errand. So I like Rosario, but he's not playing that much. So, I mean, I'd like to see him play because, he's like one of the few guys in the Dodgers lineup that really kind of makes sense as like batting average. Like he's a 300 hitter. He's got speed. Anyway, he's not really playing, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you could potentially move him up and hit him in front of Ohtani, maybe just give Ohtani somebody to hit in instead of just homering by himself and just trotting around the bases alone. Sadly, every game. That's give him somebody to party with on the base paths.
And then you have you move Rosario above Ohtani, then you move Teoscar or Will Smith to 3, and then because right now Teoscar is hitting second, which is what are you guys doing, man?
And also Gavin Lux hitting 3. Move Gavin Lux up if you're against Rosario, move Gavin Lux up, let him hit 1 because that's where he belongs in a lineup if you're going to have him at the top. It's very confusing.
Also, I don't know, the Dodgers and I guess Dave Roberts specifically, they fell in love with Kike Hernandez 5 years ago.
He always does, right?
Yeah, 5 or 6 years ago they fell in love with him, and then you're you look at Kike's stats, and you're like, he's awful. Who does he have nude pictures of that he's blackmailing? He's not good. He's not. I'm sorry. He seems maybe it's just he's a colorful character, but he seems like a good guy. But his stats are awful, going on 3 years now. Not good. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, and you can play defense everywhere, but it's not like he's good at playing defense anywhere. So
no,
I don't get it. They have so many people that can already move around. Kiermaier is out in the outfield, and it looks like he's on the strong side of the platoon. He's a defensive center fielder with a little bit of power, a little speed, and he'll do that until he spikes himself. But that's just Kevin Kiermaier. Nothing's really changed, right?
Right.
All right. Are you interested in Ryan Yarbrough as he moves back to Tampa Bay? I don't know what they're going to do with him. I'd assume he's joining the rotation, but it's Tampa, so I can't really say.
I don't know. I think it was Sunday he came in the middle inning, so I don't think there's anything there.
Okay. And I said Tampa. I meant Toronto, obviously. My bad. Just Kiermaier, Yarbrough, just Tampa Bay felt right.
I think if memory serves, I think he came in after Yariel Rodriguez on Sunday. Yeah, I think it's irrelevant.
Pretty irrelevant for us then.
Yeah.
Cleveland got Lane Thomas from Washington and sent back Alex Clemmie, Rafael Ramirez Jr., and Jose Tena. 82 games this year. Lane Thomas has 364 plate appearances, 8 home runs, 28 stolen bases, 45-40. He's hitting 247, 327, 397, 22% K rate, 9.6% walk rate. Since he's made the move, he's hitting second mostly. Did have a game at 5th, but should be in the top, half of the lineup for the most part. What do you think about this move for Lane Thomas?
On the surface, this seems like at the time when it happened, and on the surface, this seems like a positive move for Lane Thomas. And I when it first happened, I probably said like, yay. And I was like excited for it because if he's hitting in front of Jose Ramirez, and it's like, okay, and Josh Naylor, then it's like, okay, yeah, that's good for counting stats, obviously. And even if he's hitting in the middle of the lineup, it's better for counting stats than it was when he was on the Nationals. So I probably said last week that this was good. But now that and this is a small sample size, but since he's gone to the Guardians, he hasn't even attempted to steal a base. So I do wonder if the change of scenery, because he was stealing like insane over in Washington. And so if we get like to the end of the season and he's still sitting like, if he's only stolen, say, a handful of bags in Cleveland after stealing, 28 in Washington over, 3.5 months or whatever, or 4 months. And then he only steals like, less than 5 in the final 2 months. Like what would have been kind of his norm previously, near at least previous to last year. I wonder if it was more where he was, if it was more the environment versus him, because he does seem like he can steal if he wants to. And, like if you're a guy like, say like, I don't know, Eloy De La Cruz, like where you feel like he could steal in any situation, like Lane Thomas needs to pick and choose where he wants to steal and when he wants to steal. And the team is going to matter. So if he stops stealing in Cleveland, that really hurts his value, right? So I want to say it's still an uptick in value, and he's fine, and it's not a big deal that he hasn't stolen since he's gone to Cleveland. But if he doesn't steal on Cleveland, then there's Lane Thomas's value is really kind of shot. It's not good. Like we need those steals. Like he's not like a great average hitter. I mean, he's fine. He's probably like a 265 hitter, and he could have some power, but he doesn't have like huge power. So he kind of needs to add in those steals in order to have that value. So, it took me a while to come around on Lane Thomas, and I finally started liking him for my top 100 for the second half. And now, again, I'm having second thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about. For what it's worth, Cleveland is 8th in stolen bases for the season as a team. So it's not that they don't steal. If Nationals are 2nd, and they're 60 or 58 steals above Cleveland. You look at what Cleveland's roster is, and like everybody steals, it feels like appropriately. Stephen Kwan feels like he could steal more if they just let him. Andres Jimenez has 16. That feels about right. Maybe he could steal more. So yeah, it feels like they steal what they can, not necessarily just let guys run in Cleveland. And Lane's been caught 12 times for his 28 stolen bases, so it's not an ideal number. You wonder if Washington was maybe showcasing him as well, just right before the trade deadline, because he got 11 steals in July as, we were approaching the end of the trade deadline. So that might have been part of it too. Moving over to Baltimore, they traded for Eloy Jimenez. They sent back Trey McHugh to the south side of Chicago. In 68 games this year, Eloy has 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 18. He's hitting 252, 306, 357. Obviously a former top prospect. We always felt like if he could stay healthy, he would hit. Do you still feel that way after the last couple of years, though?
Yeah. He's like he's kind of like a pure hitter in like that's. I mean, he is, but he's also. I mean, it looks like he's gotten, he's aged. Maybe his bat has slowed a little bit. I guess now with Statcast, we can see whether or not his bat has slowed. It's kind of actually looking at he's got 3 steals this year. I don't know if he somehow managed to get like a 79-foot lead off of first base, but that's really shocking.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. That's the weirdest number of all of them, Graham.
Yeah. Anyway, I think yeah, I mean, I think Eloy he's fine for like the times he's playing. I think the Orioles lineup is way too crowded for him to get anywhere close to every day. Even like Ryan O'Hearn, for instance, like he's been as good as they could hope for. And he's still platoons. After 2 years, he's been platooning. So I don't see why Eloy would get every day at bats. So he's going to platoon. It depends on, so it depends kind of on like matchups and where he is in the lineup. I don't mind him in like, a 15-team mixed league that's daily where you can move him in and out. In a weekly league, he seems like he's going to be difficult to roster for a 15-team mixed league. But for like for AL only, he's fine if you can slot him in. And I guess he's probably, does he have outfield eligibility? I don't know if he does. Does he? I think he's he's got 8 innings in the outfield this year. He's got 8 innings in the outfield.
He does not unless you're
so if you have an innings eligibility, I think honestly the fact that he has 3 steals and he's only played the outfield for 8 innings. I mean, I don't really know where those 3 steals were from. Those steals are, I like to see next All-Star break, Eloy Jimenez at the All-Star game after before the home run derby. If you want to do it before or after, it doesn't really matter. Eloy Jimenez versus Rowdy Tellez in a 50-yard dash. Let's see it, man. I'd love to see that. So Eloy's fine in like a deeper league if you're able to play him like in a daily or a deep league where you're struggling to find a guy. He at least for his at least he's been hot since his trade, right? So there's that.
there's that very small thing that you can look at for the very very short sample size. I mean, let's get for the All-Star game next year. Let's get like Eloy, Yandy, Christian Yelich, Starling Marte, like all the guys who just beat the ball straight into the ground now. And let's just put them in the home run derby and see if we can fix their swings.
Yeah.
That sounds like a win to me.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that was the I thought you were going to say the guys beat the ball into the ground and then they have Eloy and Rowdy run for them. Like those little league drills where it's like the coach hits the ball and the guys run. Yeah,
the kids have to run. Yeah, that always felt weird, but yeah. Like you can't let me hit. Like you're so obsessed with controlling the bat.
That was always the I feel like every coach. It was like the coaches who were still like they would have glory days. Bruce Springsteen song playing in their car, and then they get out of the car, out of their Trans Am, and they'd be like, "All right, I'm going to hit some." And it's like, dude, you're not supposed to be hitting. Why are you
hitting like 85-mile-an-hour rockets? And
it's like everyone go as far back in the outfield as you can go. I'm going to do some batting practice. Like what? This is so useless. The coach just wants to hit.
All right, great. Let's move on over to Kansas City, where they traded for Paul Dejong. White Sox got back Harold Rosado. 106 games this year. Dejong has 19 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 41-45. He's hitting 231, 277, and 433. He's got a 30.5 K rate, 4% walk rate. He was occasionally playing and hitting 7th for the White Sox, but now he's moved to a better team and he starts every day somehow. Been hitting 6th through 8th. he's kind of actually been splitting a little bit with Michael Garcia and Michael Massey, and they're all just kind of moving around like second base, third base. But he's played most days. What do you think about Paul DeJong here?
So I will cop to admitting that I picked up Paul Dejong like, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, and I haven't even considered dropping him. I mean, he's been really kind of decent for power. Not much else, but he's hit for power, right? I don't think there's much there beyond that. He's obviously at this point we know what Paul DeJong is capable of. Like, I think his 2019 season of 30 homers and hitting 233, that's like the pinnacle. He might come close to that this year. I mean, it depends on if he he's got 19 homers right now and he's hitting 231. So he just needs a hot final 2 months, really. I don't mind him if you need power at MI. Obviously, it depends on what your needs are. I don't really mind Paul DeJong. It's surprising, but yeah, I think if anything, he might have moved down a little bit in the lineup in his new environment. So, maybe a little bit less. He was playing for the White Sox. So everything's better. Forget what I was going to say. Everything is better if you get off the White Sox. So I don't mind Paul DeJong for power.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all you're going to get from him, especially as long as he's going to stay in the bottom of the lineup. They're putting Michael Garcia at the top for whatever reason. I guess he started the second half pretty well, so maybe that's why. But actually, if he's going to stay at the bottom, I think I'd rather DeJong hit 8 so he can at least get around to the top of the lineup on occasion and score some runs. But we'll wait and see how the batting order shakes out. Kansas City seems like they're just moving guys around wherever they feel like for the most part, other than like 2 through 4. So we'll see what happens there. Arizona got Josh Bell from Miami for a player to be named later. 107 games this year. He has 16 home runs, 40, 51. He's hitting 237, 304, and 402. Just under a 20% K rate and an 8% walk rate. He has been hitting cleanup. Funny enough, Eugenio, who's actually been hitting well, got dropped from the 4 spot since they got Bell, and now he's hitting like 7. It feels like a really weird reaction to trading for Josh Bell is to drop, your other power hitter to the bottom of the lineup. But hey, that's what they're doing. What do you think about Josh Bell? And I guess we can talk about Eugenio, but nothing really changes there. He's basically a power bat anyway, so not a whole lot different.
Eugenio, not only was it weird that they moved him down the order, but he's also like Eugenio Suarez. I think after Michael Toglia was one of the hottest hitters of July. Like, I think Eugenio Suarez hit, I want to say like 10 homers in July. It was a really good month for him. So to, get Josh Bell and then move Eugenio down the order right when he started to click doesn't really make any sense. Especially since they're very similar hitters too. So it's like, what? I don't know. I don't know exactly. Teams make stupid moves all the time. The Diamondbacks, though, have actually been pretty good in general for like a couple weeks now. Like, their bats have been good. So they have been hitting. Josh Bell, I mean, when he was traded, I made a joke about how like his stat page is like, it just says like every year it just says 2 TMS. It's like every year he gets traded at the deadline. And off of memory here, I don't think he does better on the second team. It's usually like he hits really well in July, gets traded, and then it's like, why did we trade for this guy? What are we doing? So I don't know. I mean, that's, maybe that's, unfair. It doesn't really, it has no bearing on whether or not he's going to do that this year. He's actually the, looking at it's confirmation bias that I made. Like last year, he was much better in the second half. But then the year before, 2022, he was awful in the second half. So, take that for a grain of salt. It doesn't really mean anything, I guess. I think on the Diamondbacks, he could be like the Diamondbacks is obviously better lineup, better park. I think since they put the humidor in there, though, it has been kind of a neutral park, but still, I think a little bit better than Miami. I don't mind Josh Bell for like a corner man in deeper leagues. I kind of prefer Eugenio Suarez just because he's been hot. So I don't know if that gives people an idea of how much I think of Josh Bell. Like I don't necessarily hate Josh Bell. I just think there's a time and a place for him, and his MO has always been like he high ground ball rate, doesn't really make the best contact. So it's hard to really get super excited about Josh Bell, like in the big picture. He's fine if he's hot, and he was right before the trade. So maybe that carries over and he continues to stay hot. I think he did hit a home run in his, I want to say his first game with the Diamondbacks. So, maybe he stays hot. I don't hate him as a corner man, but it's got to be a deeper league. Like in a 12-team mixed league, I'd probably be, I would be playing him, but I would also be watching the waivers to see if there's someone else that I could, potentially pick up and replace him with.
Yeah, in a 12-team league, it feels like he fits, maybe at like the top of the streaming corner infield area, but like that's where he is. He's at that area, and Eugenio's right there. And like you said, he's been better. I'd go that direction. I mean, Josh Bell is basically just Carlos Santana, like 7 years younger. They basically do the same thing. So
yeah.
It's whatever. Whichever one of those two and Eugenio is playing well at that time, play those guys. Moving over to the Braves, they get Jorge Soler back to their roster and get Luke Jackson from the Giants for Tyler Matzik and Sabin Ceballos. 98 games this year. Soler has 12 home runs, stolen base, 58-41. He's at 235, 326, 405, 25% K rate, and an 11.5% walk rate. Looking at the numbers, Gray, apparently Jorge Soler only plays on odd number years, so we just need to learn that.
Yeah. Sure. Odd number years, aka when his contract is up.
I mean, I think his contract is always up, isn't it? I mean, has he gotten more than a 1-year deal in the last decade?
I think he's on I want to say he's on like a stupid deal right now, isn't he? Or no?
He's on a 3-year deal, I believe.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, so that's why he's not playing well this year. Hey, I'm just saying. The last year, the big narrative was like Jorge Soler was playing for his final big contract, and he had a huge year. And usually I ignore that sort of narrative, but it did seem kind of like that was going on with Jorge.
It looks really fitting right now.
Yeah, and I was kind of out on him in the preseason. Anyway, with his move to Atlanta, I mean, he's fine if he's hitting the ball well, but he really hasn't this year. I don't know. I kind of, I feel like Kalenic is really the one who takes the biggest hit here, because I think he moves down the order and also into a platoon, which really, I mean, I'm not that Kalenic was like, tearing the ball
anything.
Yeah, I mean, but he really has just had like no luck in his career. I mean, I guess he hasn't really, you got to hit when you got the opportunities. So I guess it's his own fault. But yeah, Soler, I mean, he is, technically in front of a good lineup in theory. I mean, the Braves haven't really been good. The Braves are probably like one of the most underperforming lineups in baseball, I would have to say. I mean, they have, even with the loss of Acuna, and Albies, they still have so many bats, and and Harris. They've lost Harris, Albies, and Acuna. And I mean, they still have Riley, Ozuna, and Olsen hitting really kind of like blah. I mean, Ozuna's been great, obviously, but I mean, the other two haven't been super. And then, Soler's in front of them. So in theory, that should be a good place for Soler, but I mean, he just really hasn't done much this year. So, if he's hitting well, okay. But like, I feel like I got comments Monday morning about like pick up Soler or like, a random hot bat off of waivers, and I would go hot bat off of waivers over Soler in a shallow enough league. If you're in a shallow league and you have better options, I don't see why you'd have to be tied to Soler other than hoping that he does well like he did last year, but he's just not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if the move back to Atlanta kind of kicks him back into gear and he's now playing for something, maybe that's a narrative you can kind of run with a little bit. But, if there's, I guess if Eugenio Suarez is out there, are you grabbing him over Soler?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the level we're talking about then. Moving over to Tampa Bay, they get Dylan Carlson. St. Louis gets Sean Armstrong. I mean, Dylan Carlson has a home run. He's hitting 202. I don't think we really need to talk about much here.
Dylan Carlson now.
Moving over to Pittsburgh, Bryan De La Cruz is going there. They're sending back to Miami. Jun Suk Shim and Garrett Forrester, 109 games this year. He has 18 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 45, 52. He's hitting 242, 285, 407, 26% K rate, 5% walk rate. And they've had Bryan De La Cruz hitting cleanup for him in Pittsburgh since making the move. While we're talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates, we might as well talk about the other addition, which is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa coming from Toronto for Charles McAdoo. IKF has actually been pretty solid when he's played, just missed some games, hitting 7 home runs, 3 stolen bases, and 291. He's hit first. He's hit 6th in 2 games so far. So it looks like it just depends on matchups there. What do you think about Bryan De La Cruz and IKF as they move over to Pittsburgh?
Bryan De La Cruz, I like a lot more than probably I like him even though he's kind of boring. I wish he had a little bit more speed or something, or anything really to do with speed, because I mean he is a solid hitter. He's striking out a bit more this year, but he's like a 24 homer, 250 hitter with like, maybe 5 to 6 steals. That's not terrible. He's the kind of guy who's like really kind of, I like him a lot in like deeper leagues. He's the kind of guy who, surprisingly valuable for like a 15-team mixed league or deeper. But he's not really super exciting. He's like a poor man's, another guy who's in their lineup. He's like a poor man's Bryan Reynolds. I think Bryan Reynolds is, same sort of power, but better average. And Bryan De La Cruz is just like, he's a little bit iffier on the average, and the power isn't like incredible, but it's fine. It's good. I like him. I just don't think he's super exciting. IKF is like, awful. He's terrible. He's kind of terrible. He's having a better season for him, but it's still like,
Yeah.
I mean,
he's a filler player.
Yeah, he's a fill-in for, very deep leagues. I kind of wish IKF would be more of, I wouldn't mind to see, Bay on the Pirates play over IKF, but it's not going to happen. So yeah, I don't know. I think IKF is likely, I watched, on Sunday, I watched the Pirates, some of the Pirates game, and I think they were trailing, or it was extra innings, or it was either tie or they were trailing by a run, and IKF bunted into the air. he bunted, and it was like, yeah, that's basically, I mean, the reason why I bring it up, because that's basically what IKF. I mean, if you're looking for a guy, for your fantasy team, you don't really want a guy who's like got a man on second and he's bunting. It's not really like, that's not really the kind of hitter you're looking for. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think the poor man's Brian Reynolds is pretty good comp, and also moving to Pittsburgh, maybe one of the only places you can move that's worse as a right-handed hitter than Marlins Lone Depot Park, I think it is now.
Lone Depot, yes.
So yeah, not a great move for De La Cruz in regards to power, which was kind of the thing that was holding him up. But if he hits in the middle of the lineup, he'll have the counting numbers to still help your team. The Mariners traded for Justin Turner from Toronto for RJ Schreck. Add Justin Turner to that list of people who just have a ton of two-team seasons at this point, Gray. 95 games. He has 7 home runs, 39-37. He's hitting 257, 348, 376, 17.5% K rate, 10.6% walk rate, and he's been hitting cleanup for the Mariners since he got moved. Where does he fit in among Suarez, Bell, and we'll throw De La Cruz in here just for the sake of we could talk about these guys.
I think he's last. I don't, I think Justin Turner is probably he's far. I think he's far last even. I don't think. I mean, he's good for real baseball for the Mariners, but I don't really have any, fantasy wise, his time is done. I don't see, he's like basically a step above like Matt Carpenter. Like, I'm surprised Justin Turner's even playing as much as he is. I mean, he hasn't been like, all things considered, hitting 255 or 257 as Justin Turner is right now. I mean, that's commendable for his age and how he's hitting. I would guess that he's like, I mean, his hard contact is just in the toilet. He's not, I mean, he's no longer able to make good contact, which is not surprising. I wouldn't pick up Justin Turner in, anything but, I want to say like AL only, maybe 15-team mixed league if I'm really like incredibly struggling and I can't find anyone, as like a fill-in or something. But yeah, it's not great.
No, it's not. I mean, even I guess if you're chasing county numbers or average, he can be useful, but that's really the only things he can possibly give you. An average, even that's not even on, he's hitting really well right now, average wise, but that can bottom out any given moment. Moving over to San Francisco, they got Mark Canha. They send back to Detroit Eric Silva. Canha's got 7 home runs, 4 stolen bases. He's hitting 235. He's hitting second in the short side of a platoon. So I really don't think there's much here to talk about, Gray. Let's move on to some of the arms that got moved. San Diego got Tanner Scott. We talked about him probably being on the move. They also got Brian Hoying in the deal. They sent back Robbie Snelling, Adam Mazur, Graham Pauley, and Jay Bashirs to Miami. Tanner Scott does move. It's to San Diego, so it's still a good park. Not really changing in the numbers, but he's probably setting up Suarez unless Suarez struggles. Are you hanging on to Tanner Scott in a 10 or 12 team league still, or are you dropping him for, streaming closer of the day?
Yeah, no, I think I actually dropped Tanner Scott in a few leagues after this. I believe I dropped him for like the Calvin Fulchers of the world or something. Yeah, it's unfortunately Tanner Scott's fine for if you need a middle reliever with good ratios, but his time is kind of done as far as saves goes, unless except for like the occasional save because Suarez has gone 2 days in a row or something. But otherwise, Suarez is locked in as the closer. So unless he gets injured, there's no reason why, unless your league plays holds or setup men, there's no reason to hold on to Tanner Scott for saves.
Yeah, not giving you saves. So yeah, unless you're chasing holds or ratios or bumping up against a innings cap of some kind, it's just really not going to be helpful for you. The Nationals traded for Alex Cobb. They sent back Jacob Breshnan and a player to be named later to San Francisco. Cobb is still working his way back from a hip injury, which then he got a shoulder injury during rehab. I mean, are you grabbing Alex Cobb in 15-team leagues?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, moving on. Mets get Paul Blackburn from the A's for Cade Morris. Paul Blackburn is 5-2. He's got a 4.11 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 19% K rate, and a 6.9% walk rate. Anything? Are you interested in Paul Blackburn in more than a streamer?
I think Blackburn probably. Yeah, I mean he's definitely a streamer for most leagues because it's not like you're starting Blackburn, against if he was in Dodger Stadium or something. You're not starting him there. I think the Mets actually go to Colorado this week, so I don't know if he starts there, but yeah, I mean you're not starting him in bad matchups, so he's definitely a streamer in that regard. I do think, like other players, other pitchers this season who, if they're managing to, control their pitches, they're having some success. So I think Blackburn could have like a little bit of success. I just, obviously you're not starting him in bad matchups. So it's like limited success, but I could see, if he gets a good 2-start week or something. Yeah, I mean, he's not a terrible waiver wire pickup in deeper leagues if the matchups are good.
Yeah, I agree. A good matchup streamer, absolutely. But that's pretty much what he is, unless he gets on kind of a run here. Baltimore gets Trevor Rogers from Miami for Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers. 109 innings. Trevor Rogers 2-10 this year, 4.76 ERA, 1.55 WHIP, 17.8% K rate, 9.9% walk rate. He started the season just awful, but has been better in June and July. I mean, this felt like a little bit much for Trevor Rogers in those numbers that I just gave you, but like I said, he has turned it around a little bit. Are you interested in Trevor Rogers? And I guess, would you rather have him or Paul Blackburn, or are they in that same good matchup, type of streamer?
I kind of want Blackburn, to be frank, but I if they're both in the same matchup, yeah, if they both were facing like the Rockies at home, I would probably go Blackburn. So I guess I want Blackburn over Rogers. I don't really I hear you on the splits say Rogers was better as the season progressed, even though his first start with the Orioles wasn't good. So, maybe Rogers could have something there, but I mean, I feel like the Orioles, removed Trevor Rogers' like they scratched out his name and over it they just wrote 40 innings. That's all he really is to them. I don't even think they care what they get from him because they're going to the playoffs. They're trying to just, throw a couple guys to make sure they get to the playoffs with, innings wise. They're just trying to get to the end of the season at this point. So, yeah, I don't think there's much there, but maybe in a good matchup, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's about the same. I think I would go Blackburn over Rogers. Just the walk rate's a little bit better, which limits the amount of blow up that can happen. So I think I'm with you, but it's completely matchup based there. Moving over to Houston, where they get Yusei Kikuchi from Toronto for Jake Bloss, Will Wagner, and Joey Loperfido. 121 innings, 4-9 record, 4.67, 1.33 whip, 27% K rate, 6.4% walk rate. And he's been the opposite of Rogers, who he was good to start the season, and then he has been really bad in June and July. Not usually a question I ask you on this pod, but does this feel like a lot for, again, those numbers, Gray? That both these last two feel like a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't know. I don't know really what the Astros. I feel like the Astros are a smartly run team, so I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that Luperfido is like, to them, feels like a guy who's going to wash out and not really meet his potential. So, I mean, I'm guessing that the Astros look at Luperfido and they're like, he's not really going to be as good as people think. So let's get rid of him now before the word is really out. I don't know. I'm honestly guessing with that, because the Astros usually make smart deals, but it was, the Astros deal for Kikuchi felt like, they were paying a lot. They paid a lot. I think going back to Kikuchi, I think his peripherals look good. So I think maybe the change of environment could help. I'm still kind of iffy on him though. Like this week, I believe he has a road game. I think it's Texas, and I don't think I'm starting him in like 12-team mixed league. So, maybe in a 15, depending on how much I need it, probably in a 15, but not in a 12. So that's sort of where I am with Kikuchi. It was a good first sign. His first start with the Astros was good. I mean, that was a solid, good first sign, but I don't know, man. He has been super iffy recently. So I'm not starting him with just like everywhere just yet. And since I brought him up with Luperfido, I like that he's batting second. He's not really doing anything though. I mean, not yet at least, but it's still, he only has 42 games in the major league, so it's still early. We'll see. I mean, he's really got to get his strikeouts under control. He does have good power and speed though, so Loperfido could be something. Before just 3 minutes ago, I was saying he might be a bust, but I mean, he may not. I don't know. I'm just saying. I was just trying to figure out why the Astros would trade him. So Loperfido is interesting to me. We'll see. He's the kind of guy though, like outside of AL only, Loperfido has to be hitting before you're going to pick him up. I mean, you have to see something before you really jump the gun on him, but he's worth watching.
Yeah, I agree. I think you just watch him. I don't think he's a pickup anything other than maybe an only league. But it just felt weird because, like, is 50 bad innings worth 3 prospects? And I mean, at least a couple of them in Loperfido and Bloss have at least some pedigree to them. Like it just feels weird. I don't know. Well, we'll move on.
Especially now with, like, I mean, if the Astros played fantasy, I'd be like, go get Blackburn for a third of the price and forget Kikuchi if that's his price. It's like,
I completely agree. Like, there's so many 30 to 50 inning 4.5 ERA guys out there. Why are you sending a lot for to pick up 3.5, 4, 5 million? Mm-hmm. Also, I mean, obviously there's not that much time left, so not paying all of that, but still, like, you're picking up decent money versus like Paul Blackburn, who hasn't stayed healthy long enough to get paid any arbitration money. So all right.
Fair.
Let's move on to the next kind of crappy pitcher. Milwaukee gets Frankie Montas from Cincinnati for Joey Wiemer, Jacob Junis, and some money. 98 innings. He has a 5.03 ERA, 1.45 whip, 19% K rate, 9.5% walk rate. Usually when people leave Cincinnati, we're like, their home park is going to improve, which means they should be at least better. Well, he went to Milwaukee, so that may not actually be true. And, Frankie Montas is Frankie Montas. If he can keep the home runs down, he's good. not, he's bad, Frankie, and this doesn't feel like a positive move for that stat.
No, no, it doesn't. I mean, your intro saying here's another crappy pitcher. I mean, it's kind of where we're at right now, right? Maybe we should move on to bullpens.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to do there. If any of those guys happen to get to the point where they're throwing well again, stream them. But I would say Montas for me is last of that group, and that's saying something, I think. Moving over to the bullpen, there was a couple of trades that might affect things there. Kansas City trades Lucas Urseg, Kansas City gets Lucas Urseg, from the A's for Mason Barnett, Will Klein, and Jared Dickey. It should just be Tyler Ferguson's job with Urseg moving on until Mason Miller comes back. That's really the only thing I see coming out of this deal.
Well, yeah, I guess, but there's also, I mean, maybe we're going to talk about it later, but there's also Hunter Harvey, I think he got the save op on Saturday, and then he got the save on Sunday. And James McCarthy, I believe MacArthur went to Japan and they killed his pitching. No, I'm confusing my history 101 with my fantasy baseball, but MacArthur has been awful. I mean, I don't even know how he's possibly made it to August and even been in the conversation for a closer. He has a 5.32 ERA. I know ERA is not everything, but he's been really kind of bad. I mean, right? I mean, he's been possibly the worst closer on a contending team for like the last couple months, at least since like, I don't know, June.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Hunter Harvey though is, Urseg isn't likely in the closer pitcher unless Harvey continues. Like Harvey's also had his issues, don't get me wrong, but Harvey at least has like lights out stuff and can get saved. So yeah, I grabbed Harvey in a few leagues. I like Harvey there. I would MacArthur. I feel like maybe bench him. I would probably drop him. MacArthur is just so bad.
Yeah, he's been awful. So yeah, I would go ahead and make that move and just grab. I agree. Hunter Harvey's probably the guy. Again, nobody's really pulling it together in Kansas City. Even Urseg, who they just traded for, has not been like good. So it's not like he can just step in and be the guy. So just a situation to monitor. But as you said, Harvey at least has the stuff to step in and give you some numbers. The Yankees get Mark Leiter Jr. from the Cubs for Ben Cowles and Jack Neely. So I don't think, Leiter stepping into the Yankees closer situation here, but the Cubs situation is maybe a little more fluid now that they've moved on from Leiter, who was kind of being used as the fireman role, which sometimes was seventh. But is it now Neris, or do you think Porter Hodge is maybe sneaking in here? What do you think?
I don't know their contract situations, but I think Neris, to me, it feels like the Cubs are just going with the guy, and they're not trying to change anyone's value in arbitration. I mean, if I can be as cynical as possible. So it feels like they're just going with Neris because, he's the older guy who they don't care if they give him saves, right? I mean, that kind of feels like what's going on. So I would guess it continues to be Neris's job, even though, his peripherals look terrible, but I mean, I think it's his job.
Yeah, I mean, they have a club option, which I assume they're not picking up as bad as he's been. So that's probably right. That feels very, very Cubs. Make a bunch of moves to say that we're going to try and go for it, and then let the money still decide what happens in the bullpen. That seems very on brand for what the Cubs have been doing this year in the last couple of years. Let's move over to Pittsburgh, where they get Jalen Beeks from Colorado for Luis Peralta. I don't think Jalen Beeks had removed himself basically from the closer picture in Colorado at that point, and I don't think he's entering in Pittsburgh. So don't know that there's a whole lot to talk about here.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
All right, over to Arizona. No trade talk, but we're moving on to just the regular bullpen discussion. Paul Sewell is out as closer officially. Ryan Thompson, AJ Puck, who are you looking at as the replacement?
Well, I grabbed Ryan Thompson on Friday, and I think he got Saturday save, and I started patting myself on the back, and I did a little victory lap around my desk, and then on Sunday he looked awful, and I realized I might have celebrated too soon. And I watched Ryan Thompson come in for the save, and he really doesn't have closer stuff. He's not a lights out closer by any stretch of the imagination. He kind of like sort of sidearms the ball, and it looks like lefties can kill him. Speaking of lefties, AJ Puck looks good, but the fact that he is a lefty, he can get out righties. And I don't want to, say that they wouldn't necessarily go to him if he is the best arm, and he could be, but I don't know. I want to sneak in and say Kevin Ginkel is the guy who actually gets the saves. That's who I went, because I feel like Thompson, to a certain extent, maybe not Thompson because he blew the save on Sunday, but like Puck, I think, was the big waiver ad on Sunday. And then Thompson got some waiver juice. But Ginkel, I was able to get for like nothing in most of my leagues because he hasn't sniffed a save since Seawold was replaced. But I think I wouldn't be shocked to see Ginkel get some saves this week. So I got my money on Ginkel, but the smart money is probably on AJ Puck right now, right this second, and that could change by tomorrow.
Yeah, and I will say, other than the one issue that Ryan Thompson had in the recent game, he's been pretty good this year. I know the stuff isn't lights out. He doesn't really strike anybody out, so it really isn't a traditional closer profile. But the numbers have been good, even if he's been maybe a little lucky here or there. But I agree. I think Puck probably has the stuff to do it. It's just whether they're willing to put him there. I actually cut Ginkel because he's been just horrendous. So until he gets it together, I don't see him getting back in the mix either. But I agree that like if he just turns it around and has a couple clean outings, I could see them going to him because it seems like they kind of like him in that role, and maybe he's the best mix of somewhat numbers and somewhat stuff, and not just one or the other, which you kind of get in Thompson and Puck, and Puck being a lefty. So
right, this whole situation in Arizona's bullpen feels to me like they're going to get to the end of the week and they're going to be like, you know what? I think Paul Sewell really is our closer.
We don't really have another option.
Yeah, I think that's where this feels like it's headed, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's move over to Baltimore. Yennier Cano has gotten a couple of saves. Do you think that it's Cano? Is it Kimbrel? Sir Anthony Dominguez was brought in the ninth, I think, last night in a non-save situation. Like, where are you at in Baltimore? Or is this is just kind of going to be a mix? And
I saw Sir Anthony Dominguez brought in the ninth inning in a non-save situation where the Orioles were up by quite a few runs or whatever. And I thought to myself, like, the Orioles are basically, their bullpen is like, how many runs do we allow before we bring in Cano to get the save? That's what it feels like. The Orioles' entire MO is with their bullpen. It's like, well, Dominguez can give up 4 runs here, and we're still okay to bring in Cano to get the save. Or Kimbrel can come in and give up 3 runs, and then we can bring in Cano to get the save. That's how it feels like their bullpen plays out. I would probably say it's Kimbrel, Cano, kind of a timeshare at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's either one necessarily at this point, but Cano's going to be used kind of all over the place. And Kimbrel's been not good to put it politely. So yeah, but I agree with your statement. They're basically just waiting until somebody blows up to bring in Cano.
Yeah.
Which is going to result in some saves potentially.
Yeah.
Because they put up a ton of runs. Miami, they traded everybody in their bullpen. So who do you want in Miami at this point? Or are we just assuming that Miami's not winning any games the rest of the year?
Miami looks like a 110 win team versus the White Sox, man. It looks like it's Foucher, right? I think he's got the lead for the saves in Miami, probably. Unless he really stinks, which is possible, he's probably just going to get the saves and, play out the rest of the year with him getting the saves. There's no reason for them to switch it up, but, Bender and Nardi, I guess, could potentially get some saves, but Foucher feels like the guy.
Yeah, if they're going to commit to giving him saves at all, it feels like they'll just leave him there. Because the other move would be don't let him save and just drive his number down. But if they're going to actually let him save, it does feel like he's the guy. If it's not him, Anthony Bender, Andrew Nardi, the same kind of guys that they've been throwing at the closer position if Tanner Scott's, out or have been throwing in a couple of games. So not necessarily lovely after Foucher, but those are who you would look at. Over in Detroit, we thought Shelby Miller might be the closer after a couple of saves that he recorded, and then he blew it terribly, and he's been struggling. Is Jason Foley back in? Do you think Will Vest gets his name thrown in? Who are you looking at in Detroit?
So I honestly, I wasn't following really. Shelby Miller, had the whispers, had the closer whispers going on for about a week or two, where people are like, "I think Shelby Miller's the guy," and it's like, "Oh, okay." I didn't really look into it at all, and then I opened up Shelby Miller's stat page, and I was like, "Wow, he's awful. He's so bad." Shelby Miller's really bad. I know he got a save or two, but he hasn't been good though. No. Jason Foley hasn't really been great either, and neither of them have closer stuff. So I would probably try and avoid the whole situation. But if I really was desperate for saves, I'd probably go with Foley over Vest or Shelby.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where I would go as well right now. It is it's not a great situation. Detroit's, obviously not a good team. And then on top of it, none of them are performing to the point where you're like, oh, if they just, throw anyways, it'll be okay. I guess Vest has been the best of them, but it feels like they're not throwing him in that role. And Tyler Holton, who was really good in the bullpen and got a save at one point, has now been moved to opener. So no more saves for him either. Let's move on to the waivers, Gray. Who you got for the people on the hitting side? And then I'll give some streaming options before we get out of here.
Okay, cool. So Gerardo Perdomo has been hot. Diamondbacks, middle infielder, has been hitting at the bottom of the lineup, but he has been stealing some bags, and he's been hitting over 500 over the last week. Luis Garcia Jr. has been crazy hot. Probably is rostered in most leagues. Colton Cowser, same situation. Eugenio Suarez, we mentioned earlier, he had an insane July. He should have been rostered for the last couple months. Last couple weeks. Xavier Edwards, he was the lead buy on Friday for me. I think he's just he's going to be fantastic. I love Xavier Edwards. Big fan. Speaking of the Marlins, Jonah Bride has been hitting third, I believe, and he has 3 homers in the last week. So there's that. Tommy Pham, since his trade over to St. Louis, has been hot, hitting well. Orlando Arcia has been one of the few bats in the Braves lineup. Has been hot recently. Tyler Stevenson had 2 homers the other day, has been really hot. Jock Peterson had a good week. Wilyer Abreu had a big Sunday. He's been hot in general. Santiago Espinal, Reds, second baseman, third baseman eligibility. He's been hot, hitting near 500 in the last week. And Addison Berger, who I'm really kind of interested in the big picture, has been hot as well for the Blue Jays. Outfield eligibility, hitting for power. He's doing pretty good. I'm interested. And Ernie Clement had a couple steals on Sunday. Speaking of the Blue Jays, so there's some hot bats for you.
Yeah, I like those names. Great. Let's move over to the pitching side. JP Sears has a 2-start week. Chicago, which is happening today, so as we're recording, so you're probably not going to hear it for that recommendation, but at Toronto, Ryan Nelson versus Philly. Ryan Nelson's been really good, and he keeps getting dropped in my leagues for some reason, so if he's available, go ahead and scoop him up. Kyle Freeland goes versus the Mets and versus the Braves. Hayden Bursong, after being amazing, got sent back down. He's getting to come back up, and he is at Washington. Jose Soriano at Washington as well. Edward Cabrera versus the Padres. DJ Hurst versus the Giants. Trevor Rogers at Toronto. Charlie Morton versus Milwaukee. Patrick Corbin versus the Angels. Shane Baz is at St. Louis. And Jeffrey Springs, I just felt like we should mention his name. He is back. He had a okay start in his first outing. It went short, but he's at St. Louis versus Baltimore. Definitely not starting him versus Baltimore. Maybe at St. Louis as long as you're not necessarily chasing wins. But even if you're not starting him, I think he's worth a pickup and wait and see because we know how good Jeffrey Springs was before he got hurt. That's all I got for you. If you have specific questions as we get down to the last of the grind here in these last couple months of the season, you can always find us on Twitter. I am at RazBeaton. Gray is the owner of the at Razzball account. You can leave a comment on youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy. Whether you watch us or listen to us, like, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you are, that helps us. And until next time, Gray, hope everybody's teams do well this week, and let's make that last push for those championships.
Late.
See you, Gray.